President Trump has unleashed on Europe at the World Economic Forum in Davos, warning that bad things will happen if Europe doesn't change when it comes to immigration and energy.
Europe and the UK, sir. Why?
No, I'm not. But they have to change their ways, or they're going to.
Why? Trading with your allies makes no sense.
Between immigration and energy, if they don't change, bad things will happen to them.
What's your plan?
And we all know the problems that Europe is facing when it comes to immigration, and it's only getting worse in the UK. We'll be crossing to London later in the show as the UK reaches another grim milestone with almost 66,000 asylum seekers arriving since Keir Starmer has been in power. So that's in the space of just 19 months. But let's go back to Donald Trump and his speech, and let's listen to what he had to say about energy, really making the case against wind farms.
The more windmills a country has, the more money that country loses and the worse that country is doing. China makes almost all of the windmills, and yet I haven't been able to find any wind farms in China. Did you ever think of that? It's a good way of looking at it. They're smart. China's very smart. They make them, they sell them for a fortune. They sell them to the stupid people that buy them, but they don't use them themselves. They put up a couple of big wind farms, but they don't use them. They just put them up to show people what they could look like. They don't spin, they don't do anything. They use a thing called coal, mostly.
He doesn't hold back, does he? He really has a way with words. But of course, the top story today is that Donald Trump has ruled out force to acquire Greenland. Let's listen.
We never asked for anything, and we never got anything. We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. Okay? Now everyone's saying, oh, good. That's probably the biggest statement I made, because people thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force.
Look, I said earlier in the week on this issue of Trump and Greenland that there's often a method to the madness. We've seen this with Trump plenty of times before, making wild demands. People don't know whether to take him seriously or not, but he often makes these bold starting points for negotiations and making a deal, and then he uses leverage to get what he ultimately wants, which is often something more reasonable. Now, the president has dropped his tariff threat on 8 European nations. It was scheduled to take place from February 1. And Donald Trump says that he's now formed a framework of a future deal with NATO. He wrote on Truth Social, based upon a very productive meeting that I have had with the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, we have formed the framework of a future deal with respect to Greenland and, in fact, the entire Arctic region. Now, he said that if the deal is finalised, it will be a great one for the United States of America and all NATO nations. And Trump added that talks are continuing, saying that additional discussions are being held concerning the Golden Dome as it pertains to Greenland. And he said that Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff will be leading negotiations and reporting directly to him. We also heard from NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte at Davos ahead of this Truth Social post from Donald Trump, who said that Donald Trump and other leaders are right, that we do have to do more to defend the Arctic as China and Russia are increasingly active.
To the Arctic, I think President Trump is right. Other leaders in NATO are right. We need to defend the Arctic. We know that these sea lanes are opening up. We know that China and Russia are increasingly active in the Arctic. There are 8 countries bordering on the Arctic. 7 are a member of NATO. That's Finland and Sweden and Norway and Denmark, Iceland, Canada and the US. And there's only 1 country bordering on the Arctic outside NATO, and that's Russia. And I would argue there is a 9th country, which is China, which is increasingly active in the Arctic region. So President Trump and other leaders are right. We have to do more there. We have to protect the Arctic against Russian and Chinese influence. And that's exactly what NATO ambassadors decided to do in September. We are working on that, making sure that collectively will we defend the Arctic region.